All right, now to this disturbing murder out of Mississippi. 15-year-old CARLY Gregg has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for killing her mother and trying to kill her stepfather.
We, the jury, find the defendant, CARLY Madison Gregg, guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment.
It's very rare that a crime is captured on video. In this video, recorded on 19 March this year, we see the 14-year-old CARLY Gregg nonchalantly walking into her 40-year-old mother's room, and then we hear her fire 3 shots. When she returns seconds later, the teen dressed in a blue Nirvana shirt immediately reaches for her mother's phone on the kitchen counter and proceeds to send a text. Using her dead mother's phone, she immediately invites a friend over and then texts her stepfather, pretending to be her mother and pretending that Ashley's still alive. At 4:15 p.m., Gregg texts her stepfather, "Are you almost home, honey?" Her stepfather responded, "No, I'll be at work for a little bit." CARLY Gregg then replied with a thumbs up. When her stepfather arrived home, Gregg tried to shoot him as well. She then ran off with a friend and was arrested about a mile down the road. This is the body cam of those moments of her being arrested. Now, without any additional context, without any additional analysis, without any additional interpretation, it ought to be abundantly obvious that this was cold-blooded murder. It was calculated and it was callous. We know this because of the teen's flat affect as well as the rapid clear-mindedness surrounding the event. But one can only wonder, how on earth can you defend a case that's as open and shut as this? In court, if you were her lawyer, what on earth could you come up with? And also, what's also staggering is that her stepfather, even after what had happened, he seemed to think that there was an intruder in the house. Can you believe that?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. If you are new to this channel, I've written quite a few books on Amazon. I'll put a link to that in the description, but I don't think we've really ever dealt with something quite like this. And so according to the defense expert, now to me the really curious thing is you've got a crime that is basically committed on camera. You've got video of it. And so how on earth do you defend a situation like this? And so the defense would go on to say that CARLY Gregg was a sweet, loving little girl who would do anything to please her parents.
What, if anything, were you able to gauge about CARLY's having any behavioral issues or a history of behavioral issues?
So it was my impression that CARLY had, to a very large extent, always been well behaved, was a dutiful girl, sought to do well in school, sought to please her mother by doing well in school.
That was Dr. Andrew Clark, a forensic psychiatrist and also expert defense witness. And he basically portrays CARLY Gregg as a sweet, loving little girl who would do anything to please her parents. Now, because her actions don't make sense, and because she doesn't remember any of it, she must have had a psychotic episode. And so when the crime was committed, she's not guilty by reason of insanity. That was the position of the defense. So Dr. Andrew Clark testified on Tuesday, September 17th, that on the day of the shooting, CARLY Gregg was grumpy and irritable, and she couldn't focus in class at Northwest Rankin High School, where her mother was a math teacher. And that's according to the Clarion Ledger. Let's listen in.
Hearing voices and sleeping difficulty, all, I guess, leading up to January of 2024.
So Carly Gregg is the victim here, and interestingly, on the day Clark testified, we see Gregg dressed in a Patsy Ramsey-esque pinstripe jacket, listening into the testimony with studious concentration, the Nirvana-shirted perpetrator now supposedly a distant memory. Now, according to an article in People magazine, Clark also said the teenager claimed that her memory went blank that day after letting her dog out in the backyard. Clark further testified that Gregg dealt with symptoms of depression and was previously prescribed medication that made her feel numb. That's according to the Clarion Ledger. Clark also testified, you've just heard it, that Gregg heard voices which were getting worse prior to the shooting, and that she had a history of some other things as well. Clark suggested the news of her mother's recent discovery of the teen's marijuana habit, coupled with the emotional turmoil that she was going through, might have sparked a psychotic episode. Now, if you think about this, if this defense is legitimate, if this defense is acceptable, someone can act with total equanimity. Someone can act deliberately and then afterwards say, oh, I don't remember what I did and I was stressed at the time. Is that then an excuse for any behavior, no matter how abominable? So what is fascinating is hearing this defense expert, a child psychologist, assessing this kid with a straight face, completely incorrectly in court. Spoiler alert, the jury, a bunch of laymen and women, disagreed with him. I think it took them less than 2 hours to find her guilty. And, they clearly didn't believe her. These laymen basically disagreed with this expert. And now let's go into some additional context. According to People, home surveillance footage from the family's home in Brandon showed Smiley and her daughter coming home. Smiley is her mother. Ashley Smiley, coming home after apparently taking their dogs for a walk. We see the mother entering the home first and going into Gregg's bedroom and finding the stash of marijuana. Gregg enters shortly afterwards and seems a little furtive and cautious in her movements, quietly and quickly assessing where her mother is and seemingly deciding on the spot what to do about it. Gregg, who is then 14 years old, heads to her mother's room, gets a .357 Magnum from under the pillow where her mother sleeps, and heads back to the other room and wordlessly shoots her mother. 3 shots go off. One injures her mother in the shoulder, another, this one lethal, hits her in the face. Her mother, Ashley Smiley, screams after the first shot. Let's listen in to that. If you pay attention to those sounds, her mother, Ashley Smiley, screams after the first shot, likely shot to the shoulder, but is silent after the second and third. But there's also a pause between shots, which clearly shows calm deliberation even during the actual execution of the crime. According to People, the teen then returned to the view of the camera with something behind her back and appeared to be deliberately facing the camera. Within moments, she picked up her mother's phone and sent off a text message. We know Gregg was aware that she was being recorded. We know this because firstly, she hid the weapon from view while walking past the camera and sitting down again, but also because she would later place the camera that recorded her in the refrigerator. It reminds one a little bit of Jodi Arias placing that camera in the washing machine. This wasn't an effort to destroy evidence, just hide it. This covering up also shows crystal clear intentionality. So I see we had about 10 minutes. I'm not going to take it further than that. If you want me to take it further than that, we can go deeper into the dynamics and background of the story. Certainly is troubling. If you'd like me to do that, you can also subscribe to this channel, leave a comment letting me know that you'd like me to take it further. Based on interest, I can do that, and we can basically assess the family dynamics, which certainly in terms of her stepfather are quite interesting and kind of sinister, in my opinion. I mean, despite even attempting to shoot him, he seems to be defending her. So what can you say about someone who tries to kill you and you then appear in court basically as their star witness? And one also has to think, what about her biological father? How does he fit into this story? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.